The Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast, starts now. Welcome back, everybody, to the Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast. I'm Salim, and I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Ralph. Coach, how are you today?
Fine, thank you, Salim.
Well, Coach, there was a lot of questions going into this game, and we got some answers as far as how the team would line up. As far as the game, though, Coach, I had a very hard time getting invested in it. Obviously, the title's wrapped up, and I was less passionate about the game, I guess maybe you could say, as a game that quote unquote matters. But we were asking questions about how they'd line up, who would be, if they did line up differently, what would that look like? And we got some answers. So, Coach, from a standpoint of the midfield being completely different, Kwanzaa in for Konate, everything else was somewhat normal.
I suppose that you could say that, but I think this last run of games is kind of difficult for the group to negotiate in some ways. I believe that they only went back to training on Friday, so they've been out for the bulk of the week, obviously celebrating the title win. So I think from that perspective, it'll be difficult. And I think I noted before when we did the pod last week that I recall my first league title with Liverpool. The last three games they had, they lost two and they drew one.
Mm-hmm.
They were all against teams that were lower down in the division. So I think there's the psychological issue. And I think basically that Arne Slot decided to play a lot of his bench players today. So Kwanzaa, Tsimikas at the back, and then you had in the midfield Elliott, Endo, and
Jones.
So we start. Like Jones did start a lot, but probably as the fourth player in his normal rotation.
Yeah.
And then he went back to Jota up front. Diaz didn't play. So, what'll he do next? My gut feeling is next week against Arsenal and in the final game of the season when they get the trophy, I think he'll play his strongest team. What he considers his strongest team. That's what I would think.
Mm-hmm.
And then who was the other game against? I know it's
Crystal. So Arsenal away and then Crystal Palace home.
No, Arsenal is at home. No, they have Arsenal at home next weekend, then they have a game in between that and Crystal Palace. I'm not sure.
Huh. I'm looking right now. Oh, Brighton, pardon me.
Brighton.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Brighton's a tricky game. I mean, I would like to see him play a similar team again against Brighton. And it could well be a defeat. Who knows? I mean, listening to fans on the radio today, and of course they get very morose about, Liverpool lost, and it shows that player X isn't good enough and player Y is kind of iffy. And I don't really see it like that. I think there will be changes. Obviously, there'll be signings in the summer, and then some will leave. But I don't really feel that it makes sense for, some of the fans are talking about Liverpool need like 6 or 7 players. So
that's excessive, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that kind of upheaval. I don't see that happening whatsoever because it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I mean, like he has the core of a good team. I think the manager will have a certain type of player that he feels fits into what he is looking to do with the group. And of course, he knows the group well now. And I have to believe that part of what will be going through his mind through these last 3 games is Endo, Elliott. Will they be able to figure in the future? Does he need them? Does he want them? And I think that has to be part of his thinking. And as I think I've said before, when he goes away at the end of the season and he looks back, and obviously he's had a great accomplishment this year to win the Premier League. But if he's going to repeat and if he's going to try to chase multiple trophies, then he has to have a bigger squad. And it's not only buying players, but it's working in the players that he's got at his disposal right now. I mean, both Endo's a very experienced player, captain of his country, and I mean, like, Japan's a good team, you know, so he's well respected. He was well respected in the Bundesliga. I think the fans realize that he's a good player. You know, he's not a kind of a flashy player. He's not a big name, but you need players like Wataru Endo in your squad. And I think that the manager has to work out, right, if he's going to stay, how do I utilize him more? How do I utilize him more effectively?
Mm-hmm.
And similarly with Harvey Elliott. Now, with Harvey Elliott, from a club point of view, there may be the temptation to try and sell him because obviously they will get a good fee for him because he's played over 100 games for Liverpool. And what is he, 21, 22? You know, he's still a young player.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these different things going on. I mean, who would they sell? And then they would get a good return for them. Kelleher, obviously. I think we're expecting Kelleher to leave, and I think Liverpool will be looking for something like 30 million for him.
Yeah.
I think Kelleher, I don't know that Elliott wants to leave, but I think they might consider it if the right offer comes in.
He would get 50. He would get 50, right?
Who, Elliott?
Yeah, especially in England.
I really have no idea. I mean, I should look it up on Transfer Market as to what the price is. So I don't know how much, you know, but they would get a good amount of money for him. I mean, it's rumored that they might be prepared to sell Ben Doak, who I think is still 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And they're expecting at least 30 million for Ben Doak. So, you know, so Elliott would have to be more than that because he's a lot more experienced.
Yeah, I think he'd be in the 50 range. Yeah, maybe even a little bit more.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they will have a budget, as to all the FSG detractors like to remind us, but that's how it should be. I mean, it's a club that wants to be self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard Hughes will have a budget that he can offer the manager. And then it's what can they get out of the budget? And then do they sell some more players to generate more funds to bring in the kind of players that he's seeking? So yeah, I think there's going to be upheaval this summer, but I don't think it's going to be 7-8 players because I don't think Liverpool needs 7 or 8 players.
Not only that, it's still a team at its core that's won 2 titles in 5 years. So, you know, Jota could stay or go, but, you know, leaning on him staying would make sense. But Nunez, on the other hand, I think it makes sense for him to move on. I think not only, you know, the Liverpool experiment with him had great moments for sure. He provided some great moments, but the expectations tied to the fee that we paid for him just weren't met. And I think it would make sense from his standpoint to go and try something different because what he did in the Portuguese league was phenomenal. What he did against us in the Champions League a couple of years back before we bought him, you know, we were really impressed with him. So I think it makes sense for him to move on also. But Coach, what about Kwanzaa? You know, he had a bit of a rough game today. The own goal was unfortunate. Then he gave up the penalty at the end. Not that, you know, in the grand scheme of things it matters, but from a performance standpoint as a player, you're always kind of showcasing your talent for not only your manager, for other managers to see as well. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about him staying or going? Because he's still pretty young. My main beef with him, Coach, is he's a big physical specimen kind of guy. He's not like a muscular like Konate or Van Dijk, but he could probably fill in that frame. And it just seems that he doesn't use that physicality as much as maybe a Konate or Van Dijk does.
Possibly. I mean, like he's good on the ball. He's still at the stage where maybe he gives the ball away too much, but I think it's partly because he's trying to play. So I think he's more in kind of the tradition of an Alan Hansen or a Daniel Agger type of player. He's in that kind of tradition. And you're right, he's still young. Unfortunately, there's quite a lot of the fan base are critical of him. And I mean, the own goal today, I mean, it was like the own goal the other week when it went off Robertson. So,
right.
So, I mean, who do you blame for that? Virgil van Dijk?
Van Dijk gets blamed for both.
Yeah, I mean, basically, he booted the ball against one of his teammates. So, yeah, I mean, it's just too bad, I guess, at the end of the day. But I would certainly keep Quansah involved because, as you say, he's young and I think he has a lot of tools. I think he has a lot of potential. Be interesting to see whether he continues to stay in the England squad.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the periphery with Gareth Southgate, and then Thomas Tuchel, even though he's not played much, brought him into the first squad for his first game. Now, it could be, because certain players were injured, that it opened up an opportunity. But the point is that he's not that far away. And so Thomas Tuchel, even though he's not seen him play a lot, he must see some potential or some things in him that prompted him to bring him into the squad. So,
mm-hmm.
so personally, I wouldn't write him off.
Coach, have we seen enough of the Chiesa experiment, or is the jury still out?
I think I've said this before. I think that what's happened with Chiesa, I mean, he's at his peak, he was certainly a top player. And I think that Liverpool just got an opportunity to sign him at a very cheap price for a player of his caliber, mm-hmm. with the downside being his recent injury record. And I think they also did it partially because there was all the whining going on. Oh, they haven't signed anybody. and so I don't know. For me, it was a token signing, and he did have a run early in the season when he was out because of injury.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a while ago, and the fact is that Arne Slot's not playing him much. So that to me suggests that he doesn't rate him, basically he's player 6 of his forward rotation, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I would say that it's very likely. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Italian clubs that would come back and sign him.
Yeah, I think, it was a low risk kind of potentially high reward type of gamble. And so
look, if they can get another 10 million pounds for him, then I think they'll sell him because that's 10 million more for the overall kitty.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the player's likely to go. I mean, we noted Kelleher, because I'll be surprised if he plays Kelleher before the end of the season. He might, though. He might.
Maybe against Brighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as a way to say thanks for all he's contributed.
Sure.
So there's always that possibility. So I think Kelleher will leave. Obviously, there's Trent, that we're all expecting to leave.
You mentioned Ben Doak.
Well, I'm thinking at the back. I'm thinking that they might want to keep hold of Joe Gomez.
You think so?
Yeah, because he can double up. They can't sign too many players, so if we're to believe the newspaper talk and everything, it seems like they really want a left back, and they're looking seriously at Kirkes at Bournemouth and Anthony Robertson at Fulham. So can they afford to sign two fullbacks, a right and a left, paying out a decent amount of money? Can they really afford that when it seems like, okay, they might want a central defender, they might want a striker. Do they want a holding midfielder? So they've got all these priorities. So they might want to keep Gomez because he's versatile, and he's experienced. He's played a lot of games for Liverpool, even though he's had his injury. His injury spells out. And then in the midfield, I think if they were to sell Elliott, they would only do it if they got a really good offer.
Yeah.
And moving further, well, there's also Tyler Morton. I think Tyler Morton will go. I think they want like 20 million for him. So I think Tyler Morton will leave. And then I think, that Stefan Bajcetic will be coming back into the picture. And I think he'll be evaluated.
Yeah.
Manager in terms of the rest of the first team squad, and then they'll make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the decision could be, okay, well, like we'll keep him in the first team squad, or it could be loan him again, or it could be sell him because he's a good player. He's a good young player. I think he's still only 20, so he's a young lad still. But they might get good money for him. It's a bit like the Harvey Elliott type of scenario. So, and then when you come to the forwards, I mean, Ben Doak is clearly talented. He's clearly talented, but like Jota, he has injury issues. He gets injured a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is because of the style of player he is. I mean, he's very dynamic. He's very
quick. Yeah.
And he gets hit a lot. So, injuries. Nunes, I think, will go. I like Nunes, and I always have, but clearly he doesn't quite fit into the requirements of what the team needs, and he's not consistent enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could be at other places, and I think they'd get a decent amount of money for him.
Yeah. So, Coach, Kelleher, Nunes, Ben Doak, Tyler Morton, and let's just say Elliott. Kelleher for 30, Nunes around 60. These are just guesses. Ben Doak, you mentioned 30, Tyler Morton 20, Elliott, let's say 50. That's almost 200 million pounds. It's 190 million pounds. That you could turn around and do a lot of damage with that in a good way.
Right. I mean, but he's already got a war chest, and so you're hearing these figures. It could be up to 200 million already. Does he really want to bring in, say, like 7 or 8 players? I mean, if he was to bring in a lot of players, it would really have to be something like 3 players that are potential starters,
mm-hmm.
maybe a couple of squad players, and then maybe a couple of developmental players, like young talents that haven't played much. I mean, that's the only scenario that I could see for lots of players. But
well, with Kelleher, he's already, somewhat replaced with Georgi Mamadarishvili. I think I said that right. And then, so that one's already taken care of.
Nice.
Ben Doak and Tyler Morton and bit part players and injuries. So really, I wonder if Rio maybe takes over for Ben Doak in the hierarchy there. So at that point, you're looking at a forward for Nunes and a midfielder for Elliott. So even though Trent also, obviously we need some sort of replacement, but it's interesting that you can see how those players would go, and then a couple from the academy would get a little bit more exposure to the first team, and then a forward and a midfielder, and could be done. It seems like a lot, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to gauge the newspaper talk, but it seems to me that the three priorities are central defender, left back, and striker.
Yeah.
Now, for the last few years, they've been chasing holding midfielders because there's a whole stream of them, that haven't come. But it seems like that's not as high a priority now. But they do have to consider, well, what happens if Gravenberch was to get injured? So,
right.
So I mean, like they have to have a plan for a key player like that. They have to have a replacement or a plan. So I mean, like Bajcetic got a decent run a few seasons back. He's been playing. He went with Red Bull. I can't remember which Red Bull he went with. The Austrian one.
Yeah, Salzburg.
And he was moved to Spain.
Yeah, Las Palmas, I think.
Yeah, he's with Las Palmas, and so I believe he's had a good run with Las Palmas because Salzburg were struggling as a team. So he's had a good run there, and I guess the other player that could potentially play there from the academy is McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I mean, I think the manager likes Trey Neone, but the issue I see with Trey Neone, and I think we saw that against Plymouth Argyle, is physically he's just, he's nowhere near, playing first team level on any kind of regular basis. He's nowhere near.
Yeah, he's very, very thin, and skill-wise, I mean, you can see the talent there. There's no question about it. But if he can bulk up a little bit in the next year and a half, that would benefit him massively to be able to just manage the physicality. But Coach, without getting too far into the transfer and what the team could look like next year, you did mention Kirkes though. And that name has been constantly linked with the left back position at Liverpool. And I think he has a clause in his contract for £40 million, which is for a player like that, at I think 22, 23 years old, Hungarian, maybe Dominic could help out there, but that one makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does, and he's certainly got lots of similar traits to Andy Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very dynamic, a good crosser of the ball, works hard, solid defensively. So I think he has a lot of assets, and I mean 40 million. I don't think that's too big a hole in the overall budget.
Yeah.
Because as we're saying, it's not only what they have now, but it's what they can do if they sell players. So I think they can easily afford somebody like him.
On the other, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the question is, does he want to come? Because a lot of these players, that Liverpool are being linked with. So Kirkes, and then the centre half. How was his last name said? Is it
Hoyson? I think.
Hoyson, yeah. And
he's fantastic.
These are both being looked at by a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
So does that mean that just because Liverpool are looking at them, and I think Hoyson's release clause is something like 50.
Yeah.
So doesn't necessarily mean that they will come to Anfield. Maybe not.
Yeah.
So if they don't get either of those two players, I mean, like Robinson, and Anthony Robinson is linked a lot. The thing that, from a club perspective, that might go against Anthony Robertson is he's not going to have a big sell-on value.
Right.
He's 28 years old.
Right.
That said, in terms of his style and his ability, he would bring a lot to the team. So,
yeah.
So what kind of price would he be? Is it worth investing? Because I think generally that they don't like to spend a lot for players who are over. Is it 27? I've heard. To the 27th,
Yeah,
28th.
something like that. Yeah. Because, yeah, you have their prime years and then, the 31, 32, any point in time after that is where the, quote unquote drop off is. For me, Kirk, as being that young makes the most sense. But it'll be interesting. Coach, on the other flank, though, I mean, we've seen enough of Bradley, right? It's Bradley's job now that Trent has half a foot in, or a full, who knows how many feet he's got into Madrid already. But, I mean, it makes sense, right, Coach? He's aggressive. He's tenacious. He does bring something offensively. It's not to the level of Trent, but the defense is also a higher level than Trent. So what do you think about that?
Right. I think with Bradley, I think you're right. He probably does have his foot in the door. I don't think they're looking to spend a lot of money on a right back. Or that's the impression, that seems to be coming back. They're certainly not going to be able to get a right back that has like for like skill set to Trent Alexander-Arnold. And so I feel that that's why they might want to keep a hold of Joe Gomez, because he's played there a lot at right full back. He's experienced where Bradley isn't. He's a little better going forward than I think people give him credit for. He's a little better than maybe most realize. I mean, like, he's not an out-and-out attacking fullback, but I think he can knock in a decent cross. He also has a good long throw as well, which is something that they've used from time to time when he was playing for Jurgen Klopp. And of course, playing central defense, and he's played a lot at left fullback as well. So I think that they, unless Gomez is really set on leaving the club, I think that they'll try to keep him. And if they have Gomez and Bradley, I don't believe that they'd probably sign a right fullback.
Yeah, that's I think that'd be a little bit of a gamble with the injury record of Gomez, and also the way Bradley plays. You can see him catching a knock here and there as well. We'll see. There's a lot up in the air, but Coach, just kind of to wrap everything up. I think a good point that you made earlier on about the way that this is going to kind of play out in the next 3 games is you can see a team wanting to compete with Arsenal in the next game and putting a full team out there, and then kind of maybe testing some other players against Brighton, and then Crystal Palace at home, final game. You probably want to go out with a W as well. But these games, it's so hard to really get invested in these games. I mean, I watched it. I'm glad I watched it, but it just didn't have the same effect. And kudos to them for really, wrapping this thing up early. It's a big weight off your shoulders, but from an excitement standpoint, it's nice when it's, final day or the last 2 weeks, it comes down to those things. However, we'll take this every time, all day long, every time. So, Coach, saying all that, I think that'll wrap up today's podcast. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Those watching on YouTube, appreciate you as well. Please subscribe, follow, do all those good things, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye.